Hello, everybody. The Vocation Rebalance 2026 patch notes are now available and it's releasing soon. And in this video, we will break down all of the changes coming to the Paladin. As a reminder, I am primarily a solo player, so majority of the focus of the video will be on solo play. But, Paladin's changes basically apply to solo and duo and team hunts almost equally. So I think for everybody, this will be fairly useful. And the video will be split into a couple of sections. First of all, we will just be going top to bottom through the patch notes that are relevant for the Paladin and talking about them a little bit. And then we'll have a second section of the video where I'll sort of break the changes a little bit into a little bit more detail, where we talk about like the wheels and some specific rotations and stuff like that, a little bit more in depth at the end. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching and let's dive into it. So starting from the bottom at the very top, we have AoE rune adjustments. So the thing you need to know about here is that all the runes are now have the same base power of 50. Now, as we'll get to it a little bit later, it's unlikely that paladins will be using runes going forward. You'll be using new spells called barrages. But just so you know, the base power has been equalized across all 4 elemental runes. So if you do want to use them, keep that in mind that it's no longer that thunderstorms and stone showers are weaker. Moving on, we have a charm double proc adjustment. This is primarily a paladin change. This only, at the moment, only affected AoE ammunition. Basically, your charms will now only proc on your initial target of your diamond arrow. So if you've got 10 monsters, you've got one selected with the diamond arrow, you hit 10 of them, only the one that you have selected will proc charms. This applies to everything such as fatal hold, low blow, all the elemental charms, etc. Now, this is in line with what basically every other vocation has been like. And this has been a nerf coming for a very long time. The double charm proc, especially on high level paladins, was a huge DPS boost on high level creatures. So this was a long time coming. And to make up for it, the paladin is getting some other nice changes. But you do need to keep that in mind that now it's just the primary target of your AoE attacks, diamond arrows only, that will have the charm applied. For spells, it's still the same. So if you cast your, Divine Caldera, Massan, still everybody, right, gets the charm procs. It's just diamond arrows that it affects. Then we've got Gift of Life improvement, now additionally recovers mana. This is primarily for the mages for buffer. We've got group EXP bonus, not really relevant for the Paladin, but yeah, you're going to have a little bit more EXP in duos and trios. Combat mode removal, not relevant for the Paladin because you were always in offensive stance anyway. Then we have some mitigation adjustments. The main thing to know here is that gems, lesser mitigation gems, now provide 30% mitigation multiplier when upgraded instead of 7.5. So it's a 4-fold increase and actually makes them very good. I think high level paladins with best in slot have somewhere between like 1.5 to 2% mitigation, which means that a 30% mitigation multiplier may get you something like 0.5% damage reduction, 0.5% damage reduction across the board against everything other than agony, which is very good. Yeah, basically mitigation gems, mitigation lesser gems are now very good. Probably the most versatile defensive gems you can get. Of course, elemental gems, when targeted towards a particular respawn that you're hunting, are often better. But mitigation gems are just great across the board and will always work basically everywhere. And we've got potion management improvements. You've got some changes here. For the paladins, you will now receive a superior mana potion, which is used at level 100. It is, in my opinion, is basically the go-to from level 100. So you will not really be using great mana potions anymore. The superior mana potions are only slightly tiny little bit worse efficiency-wise. So, but it's good enough. So you'll be using those. You will also get access to distilled ultimate mana potion, which is basically an ultimate mana potion available from level 200. But it will cost 50% more than a regular ultimate mana potion. So you only really want to be using that, to top up your mana in case of like emergencies or if you're on like Drome or something like that. I think primarily you'll still be using ultimate spirit potions as like, your emergency type healing type potion. And when you only need mana, you'll likely be using the superior mana potions. However, worth knowing that you still have access to these distilled ultimate mana potions. Energy ring adjustment. This is also a pretty significant change for the paladin. Energy ring now consumes 2 mana per point of damage instead of 1. So if you were a paladin that used energy ring a lot to, move between boxes, to, have basically a double health bar, now you have to keep in mind that your mana will be going twice as fast when using energy ring. This is a fairly significant change, and you may want to consider using might rings now instead of energy rings. That's just a 20% damage reduction. So yeah, I guess not much else to say or explain about this. Is just tips off that not like the energy ring usage, how paladins and to some extent monks use them. So yeah, now it's 2 mana instead of 1. Then we've got stances. This I'm going to talk about a little bit more in once we get to the Paladin section. Basically, stances are now persist between sessions. But yeah, that's general changes. Let's just jump into the Paladin changes and begin with the stances. So Paladin now has two stances. He has a Sharpshooter stance and Divine Defiance stance. The Sharpshooter stance is basically the stance that replaces Utito. It grants you just a flat 40% distance fighting, including bonuses from gear. And this is, a lot of distance fighting. This is available from level 20, I believe, once you get promoted. And yeah, basically 40% distance fighting for free. There is no longer, the not being able to heal debuff, for example, from Utsito. Yeah, and it's just on permanently if you so choose, which is yeah, very, very nice, right? It's especially on low level, it's very, very nice just to get 40% distance fighting for free. Imagine you just like a level 20 paladin who has 100 distance. You pop sharpshooter on, suddenly you've got 140 distance. Kind of nice, definitely nice for low level paladins, for high level paladins too. However, what's even better is the Divine Defiance stance. This stance reads grants 7.5% of distance fighting as holy and healing magic level, as well as 15% dodge against non-adjacent enemies. So 15% dodge against non-adjacent enemies is just a 15% damage reduction against non-adjacent enemies, which is very big. So it's a very good defensive stance. In addition to this, you get 7.5% of your distance as holy magic level, which increases the damage of your Divine Caldera and Divine Barrage, which is a spell we'll talk about in a minute. And it also gives you whole magic levels for healing magic levels, so it increases your healing. So it's defensive in two ways: it increases your healing and gets you dodge, and it's offensive as well by getting you 7.5% distance fighting as holy magic level. People have run the numbers, and for like a mid game up, mid game and end game paladin, sharpshooter technically is like potentially like just a tiny little bit better offensively. However, they basically the same offensively. The holy magic level versus the 40% distance fighting is more or less the same offensively, but the Divine Defiance healing magic level and the dodge chance and the defensive side of it generally makes Divine Defiance the better stance. So it's funny that you've got a stance where you get 40% distance fighting for free, and it's not even the best stance. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Now this is on like mid game plus, so I think for low levels, all the way up to like level, I don't know, maybe like 300 or so, you definitely just want to be using sharpshooter. I think it's just very, very strong, and a lot of your damage comes from your AoE diamond arrows. However, the higher level you get and the double scaling of Paladin comes in, and actually your holy spells become a little bit stronger, and the defenses and stuff, and Divine Defiance becomes the slightly better stance going forward. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Alternatively, you can also be in a sharpshooter and switch to Divine Defiance stance in case in trouble. So you're kiting and you can see you're gaining trouble. You switch to Divine Defiance, you get more healing, you get dodge. Something to consider, although it won't really help you if you're boxed, right? If you're boxed, 15% dodge against non-adjacent enemies doesn't really help you, right? Because all the enemies are likely adjacent. Anyway, very good, comfortable stances. Very powerful. I gotta say, I'm not sure if those stances survive in this balance level for a very long time. I do expect we may get some numerical tweaks here down the line, but we shall see about that. Anyway, Paladin also gets two new spells, Divine Barrage and Ethereal Barrage. They are two spells with 4-second cooldown, more or less the same sort of power level, just one scales with holy, one scales with physical. So Divine Barrage scales with, when I say holy, I mean it scales with magic level, like Divine Caldera, and Ethereal Barrage scales with distance fighting, like strong Ethereal Spear. So if a spawn is weak to physical or strong to holy, you would use the Ethereal Barrage. Otherwise, you'd likely be using the Divine Barrage, the holy one, everywhere else. I think Divine Barrage is going to be the go-to, that base, the one that you're going to use in 90% of respawns, and your rotation just becomes Divine Barrage, Divine Caldera, 4-second cooldown, both of them. It's the size of a diamond arrow, and it can cast at crosshair, at cursor position, or on target. So you can choose what you want. Likely cursor position is going to be the most optimal way to use it, but if you use it on target, if you're lazy, it's probably still going to be okay. Anyway, those spells are very, very good. Very, very nice. I mean, this is a super change for the Paladin. If you've watched my streams in the past, I always said that I didn't really like playing Paladin primarily because of the interaction between runes and diamond arrows and the item usage blocking auto attacks. So I really hated that. However, now you can replace the runes, just use those spells. They basically work everywhere. And yeah, it's just going to be a very simple rotation. You're not going to have to be using runes anymore. Great change for quality of life and for fun. Moving on, we get a new AoE ammunition. We get in 5 new arrows. First of all, we get a physical arrow that has 13 squares target. It's available from level 50 and costs 45 gold. It has 27 attack, which is the same as a burst arrow, but it's less than like onyx arrows, etc. 13 squares means it hits a box. So the 9 SQMs around like the box and the target, and then it hits the 4 corners on the sides as well. So it's only 4 squares bigger than a burst arrow. I'm a little bit disappointed with this one. I was really hoping that Shatterstorm arrow would be bigger, like a diamond arrow. But it looks like they sticking with it. I left that feedback a lot. I'm a little sad about it because I thought it was a good chance to teach lower level paladins how to play with diamond arrows. But they decided to give it a small area. So I don't actually think those arrows will be all that good. You definitely wouldn't use them over like a crystalline arrow or anything. At level 50, you may use them over onyx arrows, but by the time you level 70 of like drill bolts, which have like, I don't know, like 50 attack, you wouldn't be using those. In addition to this, you also get elemental arrows. Those are available from level 125 and cost 75 gold per arrow. They have 21 attack, which is quite low. But it just provides you some alternatives for like spawns, which are very, very strong to physical. I remember when I was looking at which spawns may use those. Spawns where you're going to use those are like obviously all the specters, like Buried Cathedral, Burster Specters, Gazer Specters, etc. Those respawns. You will likely use them at Carnivoras. Carnivora's Rock, right? The level 250 respawn. And I think they actually best for Flimsies as well. Flimsies is a good respawn, so using the fire arrow at Flimsies will actually increase your experience a bit. I think there was like 1 or 2 more respawns in the game where you would use them, but boy, basically they're not going to be like a big deal. You know, maybe down the line in some updates, Paladin will get some elemental peers, for example, that may actually push those a little bit towards being more viable, but we shall see. At the moment, there's just a few respawns where you will use them, but honestly, not that many. In addition to this, we have some existing spell adjustments. We have Swift Foot has been changed, which now allows attacking and casting while being active, but damage dealt is reduced by 30%. And individual cooldown of this has been reduced to 4 seconds. So yeah, you can use Swift Foot more often. It does reduce your damage though, so keep in mind you probably don't want to be using it if you're hunting, but it's actually fairly good improvement, I would say. Divine Caldera has been power increased. This is to compensate the nerf to the double charm proc. Salvation base healing has been increased from 400 to 500, which is huge. That's a 25% increase. In addition to the Divine Defiance stance, which gives you more healing magic levels, and dodge, it means your healing and sustain is a lot better now. Previously, high-level paladins would invest into greater gems that increase the salvation base healing. I think that's probably not necessary now, and you can just focus on your damage in your wheel. But yeah, very, very nice change for high levels. For low levels, yeah, I mean, it's great as well, but healing wasn't that much of a problem for a mid-level paladin, I find. Divine Dazzle has had a jump range increase to 7, so this is going to make range, etc. a little bit more reliable for you. Divine Grenade can now be targeted with crosshair, cursor position, or below your target, so you can choose how you want to cast it and where you want to cast it. That's a nice change as well. Cursor position is going to be very nice for Divine Grenade if you keep using it. We've got Wheel of Destiny. We've got Divine Barrage replaces the Swift Foot perks in the wheel, and Ethereal Barrage replaces the Sharpshooter perks in the wheel. Now, the Divine Barrage augments are very, very good. 10 and 15% base damage for basically what's going to be your core ability. Very, very nice. I think, as long as you're hunting a holy respawn, which, like we said, is like, 90% of the respawns, your go-to wheel will basically be maximizing the Divine Barrage augments in the best way that you can. So do keep that in mind. That Divine Barrage, very, very good. And Ethereal Barrage, 10% life leech, 10% crit chance. I mean, it's okay. The second one, 10% crit chance especially, is kind of cool. Gets you like, 22% crit chance with like a Sanguine Bow. Pretty nice. So yeah, something to keep in mind, but generally Ethereal Barrage is going to be less useful anyways. And then you've got Divine Dazzle, which is the ranged etc. augment. You have now the augment one now adds +2 targets instead of 1, and reduces the cooldown by 8 seconds instead of 4 seconds, so it's more often available. So yeah, good changes for Amprez. So if you are hunting an annoying respawn with a lot of ranged creatures, if you do invest into the Divine Dazzle augments, pretty nice. And yeah, anyway, those are all the changes for the Paladin. So now let's jump into the other part of the video. Okay, so let's take a look at the new spells again. Kind of spoke about those mostly in the video. Not really all that much more to say. I think Paladin's changes, There've been some amazing and significant Paladin changes, but honestly, they are pretty simple. So I don't think we need to talk about all of them all that much. Actually, it's going to be a pretty short second part of the video because everything is kind of straightforward. So you get 2 new spells, Divine Barrage, Ethereal Barrage, 4-second cooldown, basically slots in nicely into your rotation with Divine Caldera. So you're going to be, your rotation is likely going to be Divine Caldera, Divine Barrage, or Divine Caldera, Ethereal Barrage, depending on which hunting ground you go into. And yeah, those are very, very good spells, very powerful, have nice wheel bonuses, size as diamond arrows, can be cast on cursor, just beautiful, very nice. I don't think Paladins will ever be using runes again. Basically, this replaces runes for Paladin. You may use runes for like, I don't know, bestiary charming or easy bounties on like low level. I don't know, but I think once you unlock those become your go-tos. Like this level 60 and level 70, you unlock those, by the way. Yeah, very, very good. Very happy with those spells. Quality of life and fun of Paladin is much, much higher now. Moving on, we have the stances, which again, I've mostly talked about in the patch notes section. 40% distance versus 7.5% of distance fighting as holy and healing magic level, and 15% dodge against non-adjacent targets. So I'll just reiterate, low level to mid level, you probably just want to always have sharpshooter. High level, I don't know, level maybe 500 plus, you almost certainly want to use Divine Defiance for the most part. The DPS output of those is pretty much very, very close, very, very similar, but you get those defenses and the extra healing from the Divine Defiance, so it becomes the better stance at higher levels for sure. With regards to the builds, a few things to talk about. First of all, the grenade, right? The grenade was the go-to build actually back in the day. Well, before before rebalance, you would normally go for grenade on level 300, and this allowed you to have that extra holy spell. And grenade basically replaced a rune for one rotation, right? And now that you no longer need to use runes, and you're using just the barrages, it actually doesn't seem that strong. Like grenade is still a slightly stronger spell than a barrage, but considering that you'd have to invest into the wheel to unlock it, and there's nothing really anything else that exciting in that quadrant, I think grenade builds are not going to be very popular. Now, this remains to be seen. People will run the numbers, theorycraft, etc. But my feeling is that grenade, potentially not meta anymore. And I'm fairly confident that it's gonna turn out that way. Another thing to consider with the builds, like I already mentioned, that high level paladins used to invest in the salvation base healing gems, greater gems, and again, doesn't seem like that's necessarily relevant anymore. You've got the extra base healing on the salvation. You've got the extra defenses from the Divine Defiance stance. Kind of feels like maybe now high level paladins will be able to skip those healing base healing gems and go for a more offensive wheel variant. We're gonna see. With a bossing wheel and bossing builds, bossing will still, Grand Con is still king. But now, previously you would go like Grand Con, SD, maybe Massan. Now you just go Grand Con and the double barrage, right? You've got the barrage, which is holy and physical. Just go Grand Con, Divine Barrage, Ethereal Barrage, Grand Con, Divine Barrage, Ethereal Barrage. Very, very comfortable rotation. For that rotation, for the bossing rotation, make sure to cast the barrages on target instead of on curse. And it's super, super easy. You're literally just standing, pressing one multi-action button. Very powerful, very nice DPS output. Very simple. Something else to consider maybe is that, I just took a little screenshot just to show you. This is at the updated tibiapal.com/hunting section for the Paladin. So you've got each section I've showed you where you might be using which ammunition. So of course, like I mentioned, we have these elemental arrows. You will use them in places like Buried Cathedral and Gazer Spectres. And as you can see, majority of the respawns will likely be Divine Barrage as the default barrage, but there will be places, for example, Summit Court, where I think you might actually use both of those. And this is maybe the only place in the game where I think you might use both of those, because you're in a situation where the elves are quite strong to holy. So when you've got a box with just the elves, like for example on the bottom floor on a +1, you want to be using the Ethereal Barrage. However, on the other hand, the big guys, Hanasursuses and Arachnos, are quite strong to physical and weak to holy. So when you have boxes with those guys, you want to switch to the Divine Barrage. So yeah, if you want to check it out, know what I suggest for the hunting rotation, the ammunition, you can do so on tibiapal.com/hunting. But generally, I think the builds are going to be, you go for barrage bonuses, divine barrage bonuses. This is likely going to involve going for divine empowerment quadrant. So the bottom left, you're going to go to divine empowerment, pick up the carpet, divine empowerment, and then spread out and get the divine barrages bonuses. I think that's probably going to be the default build for a level 4, 5, 600 paladin. So something to keep in mind. Moving on, some new multi-action buttons, like I've just mentioned. You've got for the boss one, you're going to have Exori Grand Con, um, Divine Barrage, and Ephro Barrage. I don't think the order of those really matters. If it's a boss that's really strong to Holy for some reason, then I guess you just replace Divine Barrage either with like an SD or an Exori Con potentially. And then you've got basically you've got your new basic solo rotation just becomes a Mass San and Barrage, depending on which one is best. It's either Ethereal or Divine. Obviously, you don't really want to be using both. Although there are cases I think we're gonna test out where maybe even skipping Mass San and having a Divine Barrage, Ethereal Barrage rotation may be okay. This is going to be for cases where you're really kiting very heavily and you don't want to stop. You don't have monsters on you. Obviously, Mass San is still cast on the character location, which means that you have to have monsters around you. But if you kite and you have like 20 monsters behind you, then maybe doing a double barrage actually works better because you can cast it on cursor behind you. Although I'm not sure that's going to be very common. I do think that the default basic solo rotation will just be a Mass San into barrage. Forget the runes. And yeah, should be pretty fun. I don't think you're really going to have any new multi-action buttons that you didn't previously have. Do make sure to put the stances on your hotkeys so that you can switch between them as necessary. With regards to the wheels and gems, I'm currently working on a tibiapal.com/wheels section where I'm going to be sharing the best wheels for each level, as well as the best lesser gems and best greater gems. So I'm not sure actually what the best greater gems will end up being for the Paladin. Previously, stuff for grenade as well as the salvation healing was very, very good. As you can see here, we have that. But I think now with the changes in the barrages, I think Divine Caldera based damage and Divine Empowerment Mastery may be really good. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not exactly sure. So we will keep this updated, of course, after the rebalance. This will be fully available and updated after the rebalance. And something else to keep in mind is the mitigation gem. I did already mention this. The mitigation gems are going to be very, very good, especially on like slightly higher level. At low level, flat hit points is still best to keep you alive. But once you're not getting one shot and it comes more to damage reduction, then mitigation is going to be the most versatile lesser gem. So you're going to be very happy if you get that one on like your greater gem, right? Yeah, just something to keep in mind. I think the mitigation gems are indeed going to be good. They're not going to be as good as an elemental resistance that's particular for your spot. If you're going at a spot that does 50% energy damage, of course, an energy protection lesser gem is going to be better. But the mitigation one is going to basically work everywhere. So it's a very, very nice gem to just slot in and forget, right? And not have to worry about switching your wheel. Anyways, this is where we're going to have all the wheels. So if you want to check those out after the rebalance, make sure to visit tibiapal.com/wheels. Moving on, potion management. I already spoke a little bit about this again. Just to reiterate, I do think after the update, your default mana potion becomes the superior mana potion. Forget great mana potions, leave those to the EKs, and you're going to be using the superior mana potion. In addition to this, you do have this distilled ultimate mana potion, which is very expensive. So I don't anticipate paladins to be using it very much. I think the primary use case for that will be something like Drome to top up your mana. Or if you pop the energy ring, which is now 2-1, right? Your energy ring is now 2-1, so it may drain your mana very quickly. You get into that situation or hunt, maybe you want to use some distilled ultimate mana potions to top up your mana after doing such a after being in such an energy ring situation. But overall, not that big of a deal for the Paladin. I never had too much issue with mana management on the Paladin. But if you struggle with mana on the Paladin, then it should be easier for you now with the superior mana potion and with the distilled ultimate mana potions. And finally, just some final thoughts overall on what I feel about the Paladin. So the main good thing for me is the barrages, which means no more runes. I always hated using the runes. I think it's very, very fun to not have to use the runes anymore and just have nice spells. And there's less reliance on charms now as well, right? Because there's no more runes, so you're hitting slightly fewer targets. And also, just the double charm proc removal means there's less reliance on charms. Which means on like lower level, your spells now are harder hitting, right? Your Divine Caldera is harder hitting, your barrages are harder hitting, and this was a compensation for charms. But for example, if you're like a level 3 or 400 and you're hunting Asuras and you don't have charms and stuff, you're going to be much more powerful now with this new setup than you were before. So I'm very happy with the barrages and not having to use runes, and even the double charm proc removal. I think it's fine. It took away some of the high level Paladin power from end game team hunts. but it has made the rest of the game, a lot more balanced for the Paladin and a lot more fun, I think, not having to use the runes and not being so reliant on the charms. Just the character itself now has the power rather than being hidden behind charms, which, if you're someone who changes spots a lot, it wasn't, you didn't always have charms applied anyways. You also get the better range, etc. with the perks as well. So if you really don't like hunting ranged creatures on a Paladin, it's still not going to be ideal. It's still not going to be great, but it is going to be better, especially if you invest into the wheel augment. So that's fine. You get a better healing. This was primarily an issue for high level Paladins. I'm talking 1,500 or so. The healing was pretty weak, and you struggled to maintain your health. So that's good. And the new stances are very fun. Now, the old Utito, I never liked. I never really learned how to use it. The not being able to heal was such a big problem, such a big mental block for me. So I'm super happy to see that that's gone. And now you get these two new stances. Both are very strong. Both are very powerful. Both are fun to use. So yeah, great. Really, really happy about that. In regards to the bad, to me, the only thing that I'm unhappy about with this rebalance is the level 50 AoE physical arrows. I truly believe they should have been the size of a diamond arrow, and their attack value or the cost should have been compensated accordingly so that they could make them the same size as diamond arrows. I felt like the whole point of adding these new AoE arrows was so that a paladin at a lower level would get used to hunting like a higher level paladin, but no, now they are basically burst arrows with extra 4 SQMs. I mean, they are better. You probably will use them in a couple of places like Bone Beast Island, Ramoa. You'll probably still use those places like that. But overall, I don't think they're as much of a game changer for low-level Paladins as I was hoping. I think the bigger game changer for low-level Paladins is actually a free Utito 40% distance fighting stance. That's going to make low-level Paladins just get 40% distance for free. It's going to make them pretty strong single target, like a level 90 Paladin with Crystalline Arrow and like 160 distance whilst they're buffed. They'll be hitting for like 1k with the Crystalline Arrows. That should be pretty fun, I suppose. Another changes just to keep in mind, I don't feel like super strongly good or bad about them. It's just very, very important changes. I just want to reiterate them again. You've got this 2-to-1 energy ring ratio now where you're going to be taking 2 mana for each HP on the energy ring. Do keep that in mind. If you're very comfortable and often use energy ring, do remember that this is changing. Do consider switching maybe to might rings, or at least add might rings to your hotkey. So if you pop your energy ring and you see your mana going down and you have like 20% mana, then switch from the energy ring to the might ring so you don't just fully run out of mana. However, you do now also have the distilled ultimate mana potion, so you should be able to load up on the mana faster than you were able to previously. Something to keep in mind. Definitely do pay attention to this. And we also have the elemental arrows, which seemed kind of interesting when they announced them, but ultimately they're not going to be a big game changer. I think they're going to be used in a few respawns. I do think there's a chance that Sipsoft down the line will make some other changes to make the elemental arrows a little bit more viable and a few more respawns now that they exist in the game. But as we speak right now, as the Vocation Rebalance is coming live very shortly, then elemental arrows, not a game changer at the moment. It will make the bestiary at Buried Cathedral a lot easier. Anyways, this is everything I have for you for the Paladin. Overall, honestly, Paladin, very, very happy with the changes. I think every Paladin should be pretty damn happy about the changes. The stances and the barrages, great stuff. I'm going to be playing the Paladin as the second vocation after the rebalance. I'm going to be going Sorcerer first and then Paladin next. Those are the two best vocations after the rebalance, by the way, in my opinion, with regards to like the quality of changes that they've received. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say for the Paladin. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're happy with the Paladin changes. Yeah, let me know if you disagree with anything that I said. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the rebalance. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.